Welcome back. I want to start today by asking you to do something. Try to forget everything you know about how the Second World War plays out. Forget D-Day, forget Stalingrad. We're going to zoom in on a very, very specific window of time. January 1st to February 28th, 1940.
It's such a strange period. A time of deep contradictions.
Right. Because if you were alive then, the future was completely unwritten. The world just felt frozen.
Literally frozen in many ways. It was one of the coldest winters of the century, and politically, everyone was just holding their breath. We call it the Phoney War, but I think that name is a bit misleading.
It really is. Phony makes it sound like a joke, like nothing was happening.
But that's not true at all.
For the people living it, it must have felt like the calm before a storm.
Exactly. The term Phoney War, or Sitzkrieg, the sitting war as the Germans called it, that really only applied to one specific place.
The Western Front.
The Western Front. You have millions of men, French soldiers behind the Maginot Line, German soldiers behind the Siegfried Line, just staring at each other, shivering in the snow.
And not shooting. It's this bizarre psychological standoff, isn't it? The Allies were just paralyzed by the memory of the First World War.
Absolutely. The thought of another Verdun, another Somme, it was unthinkable. So the strategy was, wait, use the naval blockade, try to starve them out.
Don't risk the infantry.
And the Germans were waiting too, but for very different reasons. They were just waiting for the weather to clear so they could unleash the blitzkrieg.
Yeah.
So while that front was quiet, another war was raging in secret.
Yes, the intellectual front. This is where things get really fascinating. While soldiers are in their bunkers, the mathematicians are on the front line.
We have to talk about Enigma. The German encryption machine, they believed it was absolutely unbreakable.
Because the settings changed every single day. The combinations were astronomical.
Millions upon millions. But on January 17th, 1940, a huge crack appeared in that supposedly unbreakable code.
And this wasn't just the famous team at Bletchley Park. This really highlights the Polish contribution, doesn't it?
Crucially, a team of Polish cryptographers working with the British and French managed to break a German army key, codenamed Green.
Okay, but here's the part that I find interesting. The key they broke in January was from messages sent back in October of 39.
Right.
So, why does that matter? Why would a general care about 3-month-old messages?
Because in cryptanalysis, the past is the key to the present. The Germans were creatures of habit. By breaking that old key, the codebreakers could see the process.
Ah, the human element, the mistakes the operators made.
The patterns they fell into. Once you understand the habits of the person using the machine, you can start to predict how they'll set it up today.
So January 17th wasn't about reading old mail. It was about learning how the enemy thinks.
This is the Rosetta Stone. And once they had it, the floodgates started to open. By mid-January, they were beginning to recover Luftwaffe keys as well, blue and red.
So now you're not just looking at army logistics, you're potentially seeing air movements.
It's the very beginning of what would become ultra-intelligence. It was proof that this war would be fought with mathematics just as much as with artillery.
An incredible secret victory while the world saw only a stalemate. I do want to take just a brief pause here. If you are enjoying this video, please watch it until the end. It helps the channel a lot and encourages us to continue our work.
So we've got this silent front in the west and this secret war in the cipher rooms, but now we have to look north, where the war was anything but phony.
To Finland, the Winter War. This conflict had been going on since late 39.
And the Soviets expected it to be a walkover. On paper, it should have been.
More men, more tanks, more planes. Finland should have been gone by January.
But they weren't. Through January of 1940, the Finns were holding the Mannerheim Line. They used the terrain, the cold. Their ski troops were like ghosts in the forest. It was a miraculous defense.
It's a true David versus Goliath story. But the tragedy of the period we're looking at is that Goliath eventually just loses patience.
That's the grim reality of February. The Soviet high command reorganized. They stopped trying to be clever and just decided to use brute force.
Just overwhelming power.
Massive artillery bombardments. Just turning the defensive line into a moonscape. They threw sheer weight at the problem until, by mid-February, the Mannerheim Line started to crack.
The bunkers were being destroyed. The troops were exhausted.
It's heartbreaking. It showed that incredible bravery can only hold out against an industrial war machine for so long.
And while Finland was burning, that tension was spilling over into the rest of Scandinavia. Which brings us to the Altmark Incident.
Yes, February 16th. This plays out like a spy thriller.
So the Altmark is a German supply ship. a tanker.
And it's sailing down the coast of Norway, which is a neutral country.
Mm.
So in theory, it's untouchable in those waters.
Oh, it wasn't just carrying fuel, was it?
No. Hidden in the hold were about 300 British sailors, prisoners of war from ships sunk in the Atlantic.
And the Royal Navy knew they were on board.
Winston Churchill, who was head of the Admiralty, basically decided that neutrality be damned. He sent in a destroyer, HMS Cossack,
Straight into a Norwegian fjord.
right into the fjord. They boarded the German ship, a classic old-school boarding action, and freed the prisoners. The famous cry went up, "The Navy's here."
It must have been a huge morale boost in Britain.
Oh, a massive propaganda win.
Right.
But politically, a total disaster.
Because it violated Norwegian neutrality completely.
It humiliated Norway, proving they couldn't control their own waters. And more importantly, it sent a signal to Hitler.
A signal that the British wouldn't respect Scandinavian neutrality.
Exactly. It basically guaranteed that the war was coming to Norway. It turned the temperature up from tense to boiling.
Which brings us to the wider war at sea, the Battle of the Atlantic.
There was nothing phony about the Atlantic in early 1940. It was a graveyard.
German U-boats were relentlessly targeting shipping lanes.
Their goal was simple: starve Britain into submission. The UK depended on imports for everything: food, fuel, supplies. The U-boats were trying to cut that jugular vein.
And in these early months, the Allies were really struggling to counter them.
They were. They didn't have enough escort ships. Their anti-submarine tech was still primitive. The U-boat crews actually called it the happy time.
Chilling. Now, I want to pivot a bit from the front lines to the political map. In February 1940, we see a subtle but really important shift in the Balkans.
Yes, in Bulgaria. On February 15th, a new government is formed, led by a Professor Bogdan Filov.
And his appointment was a signal.
A very clear signal to Berlin. Bulgaria was caught between Germany and the Soviet Union, but Filov was a known Germanophile. His government immediately began to align its policies with the Axis.
So Germany gained an ally without firing a single shot.
It was a conquest of influence. It showed that the smaller nations were looking at the board, seeing German strength, and deciding to, back the likely winner.
The dominoes are starting to fall. Okay, so we've covered Europe pretty thoroughly, but this was a world war. We have to look at Asia.
We absolutely have to. The war in China had been raging for years by this point, and in early 1940, Chinese nationalist forces launched a major counteroffensive.
Pushing back against the Japanese invaders.
Yes, the Japanese military was far superior in terms of equipment and air power. But in January and February, the Chinese launched a massive attack on multiple fronts, hundreds of thousands of troops.
And what was the goal? Was it purely about retaking land?
It was about that, but it was also psychological. The nationalists had to prove to their own people and to the world that they weren't beaten.
That the resistance was still viable.
Exactly. And while the tactical results were mixed, strategically it was vital. It proved to Japan that this was going to be a long, draining quagmire.
They could take the cities, but they couldn't control the country.
And that's the key. Every Japanese soldier bogged down in China was a soldier who couldn't be used in the Pacific. This resistance in early 1940 drained Japanese resources and set the stage for their later overextension.
It's amazing when you connect all these threads. We started with this idea of a phony war, a time of inaction.
But when you look at Finland, the Atlantic, the code breakers, Bulgaria, China, the world was anything but inactive.
It was just active in places and ways that weren't obvious from the trenches in France.
The image I always come back to is a dam that's about to burst. You can just see the cracks forming everywhere.
A crack in the Enigma code.
A crack in the Mannerheim Line, a crack in neutrality with the Altmark, diplomatic cracks forming in the Balkans. The pressure is just building and building.
The Phoney War wasn't peace. It was just a suspension of reality.
It was. The populations in Britain and France were at war, but life was still eerily normal. But all the events of these 2 months show that the momentum toward total global war was already unstoppable.
Someone once called it the deep breath before the scream.
That's a perfect description. The world was on a knife edge. The neutrals were realizing they couldn't stay on the sidelines, and the technology of war was evolving faster than anyone could keep up with. These 2 months really decided what kind of war this was going to be.
A sobering thought. We have gone from the frozen battlefields of Finland to the secret cipher rooms, all to understand just 8 weeks of supposed inactivity.
It certainly puts a new light on that single paragraph in the history books, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. We'll leave it there for today. We hope this has given you a new perspective on that strange winter of 1940. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel, activate the notification bell to be notified about new videos, click the like button, and share the video with their colleagues as this helps us maintain the channel. Thank you.